Primarily, they're interested in expanding powers of regulation around pandemics. This is from The Telegraph. On the 22nd of May, the World Health Organization meets for the World Health Assembly, an annual summit to which all the world's countries are invited except Taiwan, which is excluded at China's behest. Would you mind if everyone except Taiwan came? Well, it seems a bit unfair on Taiwan. We don't like them. We don't think there should even be a Taiwan. On the agenda is the Pandemic Accord that would greatly expand the WHO's powers to intervene in a country in the event of a future outbreak. Why do they want these powers? Like, it's meant to be a health organisation. We're here to help. You're all right, I don't want any help. You're having help! The European Union, true to form, pushed for a legally binding pandemic treaty instead, but the accord would still have substantial force of international law behind it to make governments impose domestic lockdowns, for example, despite the WHO's own figures showing little correlation between lockdown severity and death rates. If their own figures show little correlation between the severity of the lockdown and death figures, then what is the reason for severe lockdowns? If something cannot be underwritten rationally, then what is the reason for it? I feel we are in a situation where people perpetuate power for power's sake, where the World Health Organization would just want to increase their regulatory abilities. I also don't like, by the way, the idea that they're anticipating the next pandemic. I don't want to be naive. Pandemics are awful. No one wants disease. No one wants to be unhealthy. But my personal sense is that the solution to our individual and our collective and our national and our local problems is not to grant more power to an organisation that's primarily funded by the United States of America, then Bill Gates' foundation, then the United Kingdom. I think that they might be subject to biases that are at odds with your health requirements, my health requirements, various health requirements. I bet our health requirements differ, don't you imagine? We've got different requirements. I don't want more power externally imposed on me. I want less. I don't want less freedom. I want more freedom. I don't want more regulation. They're taking us in the wrong direction. And it seems to me like they're using various crises and threats to introduce regulations that won't be rescinded and, generally speaking, are advantageous to already powerful interests. Though some of the measures make sense, the plan skates around WHO's errors during the COVID pandemic. And we'll just skate around that. Your own errors are the signifiers from deeper reality as to where you can improve. If you ignore your own errors, I'm just speaking as an individual, where I have made errors in the past, that's where I'm most able to learn. And I'm not in charge of whether or not your country is going to have a lockdown in the event of another pandemic. It ignored Taiwan's early alarm call, praised the Chinese government for its transparency at a time when it was denying human-to-human transmissions and punishing whistleblowers, delayed declaring a health emergency, flip-flopped on masks and lockdowns, and mounted a farcical Potemkin investigation into the origin of the virus. But otherwise okay? Added to its poor performance in the 2014 Ebola outbreak, when for months the WHO resisted calls from doctors and NGOs to declare an emergency to avoid offending member governments, this track record does not inspire confidence. No, they're rubbish at pandemics. Right, this is what you should do in the event of a pandemic. What's your previous? Oh, well, I'll tell you what, last pandemic we made a lot of mistakes. We punished whistleblowers. We needlessly offended Taiwanese people. We said wear masks, then don't. We get all of our funding from some billionaires and we generally do what they tell us to do. Will you do what we tell you during the next pandemic? Yes. Yes, we will. And we'll make it law that everyone has to do it. That's not what you want, is it? Can you see where the world is going? More and more centralised power. More and more bureaucracy that's out of reach of democracy. More use of technology to create data systems that prevent us from having real freedom. That is the function of technocracy. These things have been measured. These are the outcomes. These are the results. Even if those results don't chime with your experience of being alive in the world. I say we need to go in the opposite direction. I'm not in denial of progress in areas of technology and medicine and the miracles that have been provided in both of those fields, but we have to understand who we are as a species. We have to recognise what's happening on our planet more broadly. According to the meeting's agenda, the Accord would be part of 6 action tracks focused on healthcare systems, zoonotic outbreaks, endemic tropical diseases, food safety, antimicrobial resistance, and protecting the environment. What is missing from that list? Well, one thing is laboratory safety and standards within the pharmaceutical industry. And in the event of another pandemic, if a medicine is contrived or conceived, that medicine's profits should go back into supporting the communities that ultimately had to fund it. Because even if you live in a country like mine, the UK, where the vaccines were provided by the National Health Service, the National Health Service is of course funded by you, by the taxpayer, and those profits were then extracted by those pharmaceutical companies who made all that profit during an emergency where there was very little choice as to whether or not you used their product. So I would say that's irresponsible and something that could be addressed, particularly by a World Health Organization. I mean, that'd be a great thing to do. We are the world. We're a health organization. We're going to make sure that nothing like that ever happens again. Oh, no, actually, we're going to let that happen again. We're going to ensure, in fact, that happens again. So what's missing from that list? Something WHO itself and the US and other governments insist